Orange, banana, juice B. Table, chair, wood C. Cow, milk, curd D. Fish, shark, water. Detect analogy, judo, karate, taekwondo. A. They are names of martial arts. B. They can be performed by obese persons. C. They are performed on stage. D. They are important items of Asian games. Choose similar word, sitar, guitar, tanpura. A. Trumpet B. Violin C. Harmonium D. Mridanga. Choose analogous pair, shrub, prune. A. Beard, shave B. Hair, trim C. Lawn, mow D. Wool, shear. Choose analogous pair, interrupt, speak. A. Shout, yell B. Intrude, enter C. Concede, defend D. Interfere, assist. Choose analogous pair, chalk, blackboard. A. Type, paint B. Table, chair C. Ink, paper D. Door, handle. Cattle, herd, sheep, underscore 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 underscore. A. Flock B. Swarm C. Crowd D. Shoal E. Mob. Doctor, nurse, underscore 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 underscore, follower. A. Employer B. Leader C. Worker D. Manager E. Union. Vigilant, alert, viable, underscore. Active B. Gentle C. Hopeless D. Feasible E. Useful. Bombay, Maharashtra, Trivandrum. A. Calcutta B. Gujarat C. Rajasthan D. Kerala E. Sikkim. Newspaper, press, cloth, underscore 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 underscore. A. Tailor B. Textile C. Fiber D. Factory E. Mill. Music, guider, performer. A. Dance, tune, instrument B. Food, recipe, cook C. Patient, medicine, doctor D. Trick, rope, acrobat. Love, adoration, infatuation. A. Smile, frown, anger B. Hates, dislike, attract C. Murder, stab, assassinate D. None of these. Morning, evening, dusk. A. Triangle, quadrilateral, pentagon B. Happy, gay, excited C. Summer, winter, autumn D. Botany, zoology, physiology. France, Spain, Germany. A. Japan, China, Turkey B. Sri Lanka, Japan, India C. Iraq, Kuwait, Iran D. Canada, California, Mexico. Pink, red, white. A. Orange, yellow, black B. Green, blue, yellow C. Yellow, red, green D. Brown, black, blue. Hair, brush, wig. A. Iron, hammer, axe B. Bread, butter, milk C. Cement, brick, building D. Paper, pen, pencil. Studio, Bombay, stars. A. Ship, Madras, harbor B. Oranges, Nagpur, juice C. Parliament, Delhi, ministers D. Sunrise, Darjeeling, Sherpas. Smile, laugh, cry. A. Sit, sleep, Polly B. frown, anger, temper C. Morning, night, day D. Touch, catch, release. Hand, wrist, bangle. A. Foot, ankle, anklet B. Toe, foot, knee C. Neck, head, collar D. Foot, socks, toes. Researcher, historian, scholar. A. Epic, novel, book B. Teacher, graduate, poet C. Teacher, professor, lecturer D. History, story, book. Ink, pen, paper. A. Watch, dial, strap B. Book, paper, word C. Farmer, plow, field D. Color, brush, canvas. Horse, pony, mare. A. Sheep, lamb, goat B. Lion, cub, den C. Man, child, woman D. Cat, kitten, puppy. Lizard, reptile, insects. A. Fox, wolf, forest B. Fly, insect, BC. Man, omnivorous, meat D. Tiger, mammal, deer. Picture, clock, wall. A. Pillow, quilt, bed B. Pen, pencil, color C. Flowers, garden, park D. Footpath, road, highway. Village, city, suburb. A. Puppy, dog, bitch B. School, college, university C. Continent, country, state D. Transistor, radio, television. Hunt, pleasure, panic. A. Death, disease, germs B. Game, match, win C. Theft, gain, loss D. Rain, cloud, flood. Chair, door, stick. A. Tomato, potato, brinjal B. Manson, carpenter, cobbler C. Statue, brick, pitcher D. Book, pen, notebook. Dog, squirrel, tail. A. Cottage, hut, palace B. Fish, crocodile, water C. Horse, ox, horn D. Trunk, scooter, gear. Evaporation, cloud, rain. A. Sneezing, cough, cold B. Accident, injury, pain C. Tanning, leather, purse D. Bud, flower, fragrance. Carnivorous, tiger, wolf. A. Mango, banana, fruit B. Worker, master, manager C. Cat, cow, milk D. Student, boy, girl. Magazine, story, article. A. Tea, milk, sugar B. Television, newspaper, entertainment C. Bed, quilt, pillow D. Novel, drama, literature. Detect analogy, vote, ballet, poll. A. Election B. Nomination C. Selection D. Participation. Detect analogy, Bantus, cases, Maoris. A. Tribal groups B. Herdsmen C. Pasture lands D. Mountaineers. Detect analogy, newspaper, hoarding, television. A. Press B. Media C. Broadcast D. Rumor. Detect analogy, chucker, mallet, bundur. A. Sports B. Soil C. Snooker D. Polo. Detect analogy, monsoon, chinook, Dalmatian. A. Rains B. Season C. Winds D. Currents. Detect analogy, cap, turban, hat. A. Headgear B. Umbrella C. Hair D. Safety. Detect analogy, shin, instep, calf. A. Leg parts B. Animal flesh C. Young ones D. Meat. Detect analogy, chot, UN, real. A. Nationalities B. Capitals C. Currencies D. Parliaments. Detect analogy, hat, coat, trousers. A. Dress B. Tailor C. Shirt D. Gentleman. Detect analogy, cub, calf, kitten. A. Progeny B. Cow C. Attractive D. Harmless. Detect analogy, forgery, fabrication, counterfeit. A. Smuggling B. Deceit C. Falsity D. Designed. Detect analogy, fly, B, ant. A. Cochrack B. Spider C. Termite D. Insect. Detect analogy, graphite, diamond, coke. A. Allotropes B. Abrasive C. Electrodes D. Fuels. Detect analogy, giggle, titter, guffaw. A. Happiness B. Joy C. Laugh D. Merriment. Detect analogy, Colorado, Seine, Volga. A. Ports B. Rivers C. Lakes D. Harbors. Detect analogy, coal, iron, mica. A. Gold B. Rock C. Earth D. Minerals. Detect analogy, wasp, cricket, beetle. A. Insects B. Pathogens C. Microbes D. Pesticides. Detect analogy, lion, tiger, leopard. A. Herbivorous B. Carnivorous C. Zoo D. Circus. Detect analogy, gram, grain, pound. A. Currency B. Commodities C. Cereals D. Weight. Detect analogy, kerosene, petrol, diesel. A. Firewood B. Engine C. Fuel D. Coal. Detect analogy, couplet, sonnet, limerick. A. Prose B. Songs C. Lyrics D. Poetry. Detect analogy, Paradeep, Haldia, Kandla. A. Industrial centers B. Ships C. Port towns D. Coastal cities. Detect analogy, stool, table, chair. A. Office B. Carpet C. Bench D. Furniture. Detect analogy, nuts, sesame, mustard. A. Cereals B. Legumes C. Leafy vegetables D. Oil seeds. Detect analogy, volleyball, hockey, football. A. Athletes B. Games C. Baseball D. Aquatics. Detect analogy, Rockies, Appalachian, Andes. A. Ranges B. Slopes C. Peaks D. Hills. Detect analogy, Mercury, Saturn, Pluto. A. Mars B. Earth C. Planets D. Jupiter. Detect analogy, Yeats, Caleb, Kabir. A. Reformers B. Poets C. Saints D. Leaders. Detect analogy, wheat, barley, rice. A. Food B. Agriculture C. Grams D. Cereals. Detect analogy, stirrup, anvil, drum. A. The items are used by riders. B. They are parts of ear. C. They are musical instruments. D. They are used by folk artists. Detect analogy, factotum, maid, butler. A. They are employed in restaurants. B. They are persons who look after children. C. They are different types of servants. D. They are members of the household. Detect analogy, voodoo, sorcery, necromancy. A. They are ancient arts found in sculptures. B. They are terms connected with black magic. C. They are ancient scripts. D. They are means of communication of prehistoric age. Detect analogy, ulna, pelvis, tibia. A. They are muscles. B. They are organs of unitary system. C. They are technical names for blood groups. D. They are bones. Detect analogy, supernova, protostar, red giant. A. These are kinds of stars. B. These are members of galaxies. C. These are stages in the life of a star. D. These move about the sun. Detect analogy, Alberta, Ontario, Quebec. A. These are cities on rivers. B. These are tourist places. C. These are Canadian state. D. These have fine harbors. Detect analogy, Rourkela, Bokaro, Durgapur. A. They have steel plants. B. They have coal mines. C. They have atomic power plants. D. They have the best technical colleges. Detect analogy, species, genera, family. A. These are biological terms. B. These give information about living things for classification. C. These are traits of animal kingdom. D. These are groups of animals. Detect analogy, Kennedy, Indira, Palma. A. They were presidents. B. They were prime ministers. C. They were very popular among children. D. All of them were assassinated. Detect analogy, rickets, scurvy, beriberi. A. They eat insects. B. They are infectious diseases. C. They are diseases caused by deficiency of vitamins. D. They are diseases caused by certain insect bites. Detect analogy, kittiwake, gull, albatross. A. These are found in ponds. B. These feed on fishes. C. These are breeds of fishes. D. These are sea birds. Detect analogy, Madras, Vishakhapatnam, Rangoon. A. They are Indian naval bases. B. They are ports situated on the coast of Bay of Bengal. C. They are capitals of states. D. They are famous for their architecture. Detect analogy, James Bond, Sherlock Holmes, Hercules Poirot. A. They are private detectives. B. They are agents of CBI. C. They are characters from detective fiction. D. They are the only detective agents. Detect analogy, Kanha, Periyar, Dachigam. A. These are famous lagoons. B. These are hill stations. C. These are anomal sanctuaries. D. These are mountain peaks. Detect analogy, Kermay, ochre, lemon. A. These are names of flowers. B. These are fruits of tundra plants. C. These shades of yellow color. D. These are citrus fruits. Detect analogy, naive, ingenue, guileless. A. The terms are connected with bad society manners. B. The terms are used for criminals. C. They are technical words used by social workers in backward areas. D. They depict various shades of innocence. Detect analogy, Vinci, Angelo, Raphael. A. They were Italian engineers. B. They were European painters. C. They were dictators. D. They were famous politicians. Detect analogy, Prakrit, Pali, Sanskrit. A. They are classical languages of Asia and Europe. B. The Vedas are written in these languages. C. They are old languages of India. D. They are dead language. Detect analogy, chlorine, fluorine, iodine. A. These are names of inert gases. B. These are gases at room temperature. C. These are transition elements. D. These are halogens. Detect analogy, myosin, collagen, actin. A. These are proteins. B. These are names of enzymes. C. These are constituents of blood. D. These are names of hormones. Detect analogy, vigor, vitality, stamina. A. The terms are related to medicines. B. The terms are related to one's instinct for fighting. C. The terms are a measurement for tolerance. D. The terms are related to inner strength. Detect analogy, theta, phi, omega. A. These are Latin alphabets. B. These are signs of algebra. C. These are Greek letters. D. These are used in physical derivations. Detect analogy, Abhi Bhattacharya, Utpaltud, Satyajit Ray. A. They are character actors. B. They are directors of Bengali movies. C. They are famous actor who were awarded Padma Shri. D. All these late silver screen personalities belong to Bengal. Detect analogy, Sarnath, Kapilavastu, Sanchi. A. These are place having massive pillars. B. These are linked with Lord Buddha. C. These are famous for stone caves. D. These have ancient universities. Detect analogy, Majlis, Diet, Nesit. A. These are foreign languages. B. These are parliaments of countries. C. These are names of foods for stone caves. D. These are old names of certain countries. Detect analogy, stork, goose, duck. A. They migrate to India from Siberia. B. They are water birds. C. They are wild. D. The species are disappearing. Detect analogy, Arjun, Uddhav, Sudama. A. They were Pandavas. B. They were all princes. C. They were great warriors. D. They were friends of Krishna. Detect analogy, petrol, phosphorus, cooking gas. A. They are fools. B. They are highly inflammable. C. They can be sold without permit. D. India has to import them. Detect analogy, sapphire, ruby, topaz. A. They belong to the family of fishes. B. They are precious minerals. C. They are precious stones. D. They are used as abrasives. Detect analogy, Borlag, Bartendu, Burla. A. They are famous scientists. B. They are great warriors. C. They worked in the field of literature. D. They are linked with awards. Detect analogy, green, violet, orange. A. They are primary colors. B. These colors occur together in a rainbow. C. They are made by mixing other colors. D. These colors are not found in butterflies. Detect analogy, ebony, rosewood, mahogany. A. They are trees of temperate regions. B. These are hardwood trees. C. These yield good wood for fuel. D. These are coniferous trees. Detect analogy, cherries, berries, apricot. A. They grow on creepers. B. They need hot climate. C. They are very expensive fruits. D. They have a hard stone inside. Detect analogy, Columbus, Magellan, Vasco da Gama Zero. A. They are ancient astronomers. B. They are ancient sailors. C. They discovered some Asian countries. D. They were the first to design a ship. Detect analogy, Arabia, Labrador, Scandinavia. A. They are names of island. B. They are Muslim countries. C. They have fine fishing grounds. D. They are names of peninsulas. Detect analogy, slumber, drowse, snooze. A. They are medical terms. B. The words are connected with sleep. C. The terms are connected with peace. D. They are first symptoms of somnambulism. Detect analogy, Michigan, Baikal, Nicaragua. A. They are names of lakes. B. They are names of cities. C. They are countries of Europe. D. They are good trading center. Detect analogy, mundas, gaddis, champans. A. They are varieties of fodder. B. They are different kinds of pastures. C. They are tribal groups. D. They are good mountaineers. Detect analogy, magenta, fawn, turquoise. A. They are marine seachers. B. They are migratory birds. C. They are precious and semi-precious stones. D. They are colors. Detect analogy, Nissan, Toyota, Isuzu. A. These are cities in Japan. B. These are ports in Japan. C. These are cars from Japan. D. These are teleprograms. Detect analogy, knot, watt, fathom. A. The terms are used by sailors. B. The terms are used for installing electricity. C. The terms are connected with rope. D. They are units measurement. Detect analogy, Yenisei, Orinoco, Mackenzie. A. These are small round hills. B. These are seaports. C. These are names of river. D. These are rich agricultural lands. Detect analogy, aphids, weevils, locusts. A. These are plant pests. B. These damage the wood. C. These live inside the host. D. These cause disease in cattle. Detect analogy, Kwanzaa, Frank, Lempire. A. These are ancient towns. B. These are princely states. C. These are famous fishing grounds. D. These are currencies. Detect analogy, Tola, Masha, Rati. A. They are units of time. B. They are fruits of wild plants. C. They are units of weight. D. They are terms used in a erved. Detect analogy, love, respect, sympathy. A. They are sentiments. B. They are feelings. C. They are not reciprocal. D. They cannot be displayed. Detect analogy, ovary, uterus, cervix. A. They are excretory organs. B. They are reproductive organs. C. They are endocrine glands. D. They are organs for fertilization in plants. Detect analogy, spinach, fenugreek, celery. A. These are cactus plants. B. These are wildflowers. C. These are wild plants. D. These are leafy vegetables. Detect analogy, pulpit, pews, steeple. A. They are connected with a glacier valley. B. They are connected with church. C. The terms are connected with racecourse. D. They are parts of a plant. Detect analogy, viper, crite, mamba. A. These are boot polishes. B. These are haunting spirits. C. These are snakes. D. These are insects living in bushes. Detect analogy, aorta, pulmonary, ventricle. A. They are the veins that supply blood. B. They are names of parts of heart. C. They are related to lunge. D. They are different section of food pipe. Detect analogy, Hamlet, Macbeth, Faustus. A. They were kings. B. They are plays by Shakespeare. C. They are famous characters from various dramas. D. They are characters who were murderers. Detect analogy, Vesuvius, Etna, Kilimanjaro. A. These are sites of volcanoes. B. These are hills of Italy. C. These are island countries. D. These lie in polar regions. Detect analogy, Yeats, Caleb, Kabir. A. They were given Nobel Prize. B. They were poets. C. They were social reformers. D. They were saints. Detect analogy, rinderpest, anthrax, diarrhea. A. These are diseases caused by bacteria. B. These are plant pests. C. These are pathogens. D. These are infection of stomach. Detect analogy, canoe, yacht, dinghy. A. These are tribal people. B. These are famous clubs. C. These are names of boats. D. They are rest houses. Detect analogy, comets, stars, satellites. A. They are shining masses. B. They give out light. C. They are rotating from left to right. D. These are heavenly bodies. Detect analogy, press, television, cinema. A. They are means of entertainment. B. They are means of mass media. C. They give worldwide news. D. All are public undertakings. Detect analogy, hiss, hoot, trumpet. A. They are sound made by certain creatures. B. They are joyous cries of children. C. They are sound made by war instruments. D. The terms are used in connection with news. Detect analogy, crocodile, chameleon, tortoise. A. They are reptiles. B. They have hard shells. C. They live near water. D. They keep on changing color. Detect analogy, knight, rook, bishop. A. These are missionaries. B. These are chessmen. C. These are churchmen. D. These are ranks of military. Detect analogy, Delhi, Agra, Mathura. A. They have been capitals of the country. B. They have exquisite temples. C. They have religious background. D. They are situated on the bank of river Yamuna. Detect analogy, sweep, scrub, wipe. A. These are terms connected with rubbing. B. These are games of cards. C. These are terms used by motor mechanics. D. These are terms connected with cleaning. Detect analogy, chain, link, bridge. A. They all have hooks. B. They are related with ornaments. C. They join two parts. D. The terms are related with prison. Detect analogy, new, emu, curlew. A. These are fast runners. B. These are birds. C. These are small insects. D. These are animal pests. Detect analogy, Mars, Mercury, Venus. A. They have no opposite motion. B. They are evil planets. C. They are the planets nearest to the Earth. D. They have no corresponding lucky stone. Detect analogy, Analogus, Zendavesta, Torah. A. These are places of worship. B. These are three sects of Muslims. C. These are names of religions. D. These are names of religious books. Detect analogy, sandstone, limestone, coal. A. They are formed by metamorphic rocks. B. They are chemical minerals. C. They are found in riverbeds. D. They are formed in sedimentary rocks. Which of the following is the same as canoe, raft, wangan? A. Dinghy. B. Shallot. C. Canopy. D. Submarine. Which of the following is the same as radium, polonium, uranium? A. Thorium. B. Cesium. C. Barium. D. Strontium. Which of the following is the same as weevils, borer, beetle? A. Termites. B. Lice. C. Moth. D. Ringworms. Which of the following is the same as measles, rabies, cancer? A. Pneumonia. B. Diabetes. C. Tetanus. D. Hepatitis. Which of the following is the same as sial, sema, mantle? A. Core. B. Asteroid. C. Ionosphere. D. Comet. Which of the following is the same as wrestling, karate, boxing? A. Swimming. B. Polo. C. Pole vault. D. Judo. Which of the following is the same as grafting, budding, layering? A. Weeding. B. Digging. C. Field. D. Seed. Which of the following is the same as steel, bronze, brass? A. Calcite. B. Magnesium. C. Methane. D. Zinc. Which of the following is the same as emancipate, free, release? A. Liberate. B. Quit. C. Pardon. D. Ignore. Which of the following is the same as